Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today let's do another course passage, and this is from AAMC full length 2. I believe this is the last passage of that course section. It's pretty dense, it's pretty long, and it has 7 questions. So I would say it's pretty challenging on real exam after you've done like 9 passages. This last one is like this. All right, so we're gonna dig into this, and I try to do passages that I haven't touched for a while. I'm not sure about answers, so you can see that my struggling process, it might relate to your struggles as you are doing the questions. So I think as I might, even though I might sound a little rusty, but it's worth to share the struggles that we all have and how we solve it. And then after I record the video, I'll be sure to check the correct answer and make sure that I provide you all the correct answers. Otherwise, I will just re-record it again. All right, so let's dive into this. So materialistic desire may be the engine of capitalism. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, this passage is probably about capitalism, right? And then I scrolled all the way down to the title. It says Market Vision, Expenditure, Surveys, Market Research, and Economic Planning in the New Deal. So this makes me feel like the title is about all the methods, right? The surveys, research, the planning, like how we use all these methods to see our market. Okay, sounds like so. I don't know, but I will keep reading. Okay, so materialistic desire may be the engine of capitalism, but those seeking to readdress economic inequities have also found it valuable for building and strengthening unions, regulating product and retail practices, and championing redistribution economic policies. Okay, so this first sentence is basically saying that, okay, so materialistic desire is very important for capitalism. So I'm not sure at this point if this passage is going to evolve around this desire, right? I don't know, but it also mentions some inequities like such and that, right? Like union, regulating production, this and that. Okay, I don't know. I'll keep reading. Okay, consumption. Consumption is the universal virtue for capitalism. Okay, this is saying consumption is a good thing, right? But I also don't know if consumption is going to be a main theme, a main idea of this passage. And I'll keep reading. Okay, what better weapon to trim that system's excesses? But Protean, like capitalism itself, the tactics used to master the reformist potential of consumption have also evolved. Okay, so this is getting interesting, right? Because here it says the tactics that for us to kind of understand the consumption or whatever it means, master, like those fancy words. But basically, I think it's the tactics that we use to know about consumption, right? So have also evolved. So this tactics reminds me of the title that I read. Okay, probably this passage is about how we use different methods to evaluate consumption. Okay, I don't know. I'll keep reading. Okay. Thus, prior to World War I, consumption-based calls for higher wages relied heavily on ethical claims as labor activists implicitly or explicitly defined an appropriate standard of living and determined wages sufficient to reach that level. Okay, after the 1920s progressed, union leaders and their liberal allies emphasized a different justification. Rising industrial productivity would require increasing working class purchasing power to provide an expanded market for the abundance of goods now rolling out of factory. This shift in justification for standard of living bound labor activists more tightly to the discipline of economy and turned their focus to the broader role of consumption in the economy that would flourish during the New Deal. Okay, so after reading the first paragraph, I'm pretty sure that this passage has this very major theme of consumption, right? As prior to 1920. So there are some contrasting ideas that you can find from here to here, right? There's a shift before 1920s versus as the 1920s progress, right? Not prior to 1920s, prior to World War I, which is prior to 1918, maybe 1917, something like that, right? So this is this is one period where we focused on standard of living, right? And then it's contrasting as the 1920s progressed, right? Now we focus more on this purchasing power, and purchasing power is basically what? Consumption, okay? And then the last sentence of this, the first paragraph, really summarizes this shift, right? This shift in justification for standard living bond labor activists more tightly to what? To the discipline of economies, aka consumption, right? And turned their focus to the broader role of consumption in the economy that would flourish during the New Deal. Okay, so so this first passage really very nicely talks about this the key of capitalism, the shift of how we evaluate capitalism, right? Maybe. Okay, let's keep reading the second paragraph. All right. The transition to a consumption-focused political economy during the 1920s and 1930s was accompanied by a shift in empirical research objectives for expenditure surveys. Okay, perfect. So since we're switching the focus to consumption, right? Thus, the research objectives are being changed as well, right? Are being shifted as well. So this objectives for expenditure surveys is what I read in my title. So I want to pay deeper attention to how is this expenditure survey is shifted as we transfer from standard of living to this purchasing power, consumption-focused emphasis, right? Okay, let's keep reading. Before this time, most surveys had aimed to secure accurate information as to the standard of living of the group studied. Those detailed standards of living could then be employed in multiple ways. One might judge their accuracy, compare them to those of different social groups in the same community or similar groups elsewhere, or consider how the cost of maintaining a particular standard changed over time. Differences in methodology and goals abounded, but all the studies were limited to specific regions and focused on social groups near the bottom of an industrial economy, the working class, family farmers, the poor, or immigrants. Okay, so this second paragraph focused on the surveys, the expenditure survey prior to World War I, right? Where we focused on standard of living, and it's saying, okay, we judge their accuracy, we compare between blah, 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 different groups. But there's also a contrasting idea here. Despite we have not contrasting idea. It's saying that despite the methodology and goals may change over time, but the studies is always limited to a specific region and focused on those lower class groups, right? So, okay, that's it. That's the characteristics of this expenditure survey prior to World War I, right? Okay. So now I'm making the assumption. I haven't read the third paragraph yet, but I'm just guessing that the next paragraph will switch to the talking to the new empirical research objectives, right? As we have this shift of consumption-focused political economy, so that we want to shift this research objectives as well. That's my assumption. Okay, let's read it. Okay. Alongside this tradition, social scientists in the 1920s began to build a second form of research involving expenditure survey that aimed not to delineate living standards among low-income families, but to understand consumer behavior and its effects on the national economy. So this meets my expectation, right? The third paragraph is switching to the new focus of my research method, right? Okay, so initially this work derived from concern that economists' focus on production and abstract formalism had left them incapable of addressing the distribution problems arising in an industrialized economy. After the productivity boom of the world and the recession of the early 1920s, those problems attracted increasing attention from business people, social commentators, and government officials, making the lacuna in economics even more glaring. Okay, so this is basically saying that, okay, so now we really switched to understand the consumer behavior more, right? To understand, or in other words, purchasing power more, right? And its effect in national economy. And it's just some elaboration of why we switch the gear, okay? All right, a key push, okay, we're here, okay? A key push for research came from institutional economists who made investigations of consumption and consumer behavior a central, okay, see here, consumption and consumer behavior, a central component of their empirical assault on neoclassical economics, effectively charged the institutionists. Economists lacked a sophisticated, empirical grounded theory of consumer demand. Okay, so perfect. So really, they're just saying like, okay, now they're really doing this investigation. They push this through those people who made investigations of a consumption and consumer behavior, right? And then I would assume that neoclassical economics, even if I don't know what does that mean, I've never measured the economy, right? But I would have guessed, okay, this is some different studies, right? Different. They have different methodology when studying economy, right? And then this is different than this consumer behave focused method, right? Okay, perfect. So let's, last paragraph, perfect. Expenditure survey promised to be a valuable tool for overcoming this deficit because suitably designed studies could reveal how consumption varied with such factors as income, family size, occupation, ethnicity, or geographic location, right? So I'm just thinking, if I were the MCAT author, I can ask something, okay, what does deficit refer to in the passage, right? And then if, oh my gosh, this is a really long passage, right? Then you can really see that when after overcome the deficit, what did we do? After this overcome this deficit, we had those studies that reviewed how consumption varied with different factors. So I would assume, okay, the deficit is that the methods, the surveys, the whatever research methods that we used before have this deficit of not able to reveal how consumption is varied with factors such as income, family size, occupation, ethnicity, blah, 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 right? So yeah, this is just something I think could pop up in a question, right? They can ask you a question like that. Okay. All right, let's keep reading. The 1935 to 1936 study of consumer purchases was an extraordinary survey that encompassed annual income data from 300,000 families across the country, with 60,000 of them supplying information about annual expenditures subdivided into more than 500 categories. The study was an order of magnitude more extensive, analytically sophisticated, and technically complex than any previous expenditure survey. Created and administered primarily by left-leaning economists, the project was intended to help design, justify, and implement economic policies that would raise mass purchasing power in order to overcome the Great Depression, thereby linking liberal objectives to economic recovery. Okay, so they're saying that this new objective is pretty liberal, right? And then it focuses on purchasing power. It's led by this left-leaning economists, right? So on and so forth. Okay, and then so let's summarize what each paragraph is talking about, and then we can come up with a main idea. Okay, so the first paragraph is basically this background, right? This capitalism, so that we have a different focus prior to World War I versus as the 1920s progressed, right? Okay, so we have different ideas about capitalism, right? The latter one is focusing on this purchasing power, right? Okay, and then the second paragraph is talking about the old method that we use, right? The old data, how do they utilize the data? What did they do, right? Okay, and then the third paragraph is talking about this new method, right? To understand consumer behavior and its effects on national economy. This aligns with the contrast that was made in the first paragraph, right? Okay, so this is the third paragraph. And the last paragraph is what? Last paragraph is also talking about the new method, the new expenditure survey, right? How it is, there's a specific example, this specific thing is an extraordinary survey, right? Give you some data, some detail to back up that, such thing that overcome whatever deficit, right? And it's really doing the thing for the context of a history, right? To overcome the Great Depression, things like that. Okay, so the main idea is what? So the main idea is really this, we can really tell from this title, is really this shift of the vision, thus the shift of this expenditure survey, market research and economic planning, right? So as the vision changes, that we have different methodology to evaluate capitalism, to evaluate the market, okay? So I would say like this shift, this letter emphasizes on purchasing power, consumer behavior, okay? So these are all my main idea, okay? Okay, perfect. So this is the passage, okay? So let's read the question, okay? All right, so question 47. Based on the passage, which of the following best describes how research objectives changed beginning in the 1920s and 1930s, okay? So how do we simplify it? So very easy. This question is not too much work to be simplified, right? Basically, it's saying that, okay, in the beginning of the 1920s, basically after World War I, right? After World War I, how does the vision, thus how does the research objective change, right? Okay, how does it change? A shift toward providing an empirical basis for economic policy, okay? So this is really tricky because as I read about economic policies, right? Because here, the last paragraph, we say that, okay, this really facilitates, right, this economic policies. But really, this is talking about this pretty specific example. So I would say it is not very broad. You know, it might not apply to the big research objective change beginning in this period of time, okay? So maybe not. Let's keep reading. B says a shift toward documenting trends in industrial production, okay? So this is a maybe not, right? Because I think this is more like before World War I, where we focused on this standard of living, that we focused on production, right? The economy wasn't that good back then, so that we focused on this production, right? And then I think after the war that we have this, we were overproducing, right? That's why that the economists change their vision, okay? All right, so I would say that, yeah, B is also maybe not, okay? And then what about C? C, a shift toward examining consumer behavior. Okay, yeah, I like this so far. This meets my expectation, right? Okay, so maybe yes, okay, but I'll just finish reading. And D says, a shift toward defining an appropriate standard of living. Okay, this is just like B, right? It is talking about what's prior to World War I, okay? So in this case, I think C is my best answer, okay? All right, question 48. Of the following statements, which one best describes the central focus of the passage? Okay, this is literally asking me about the main idea, right? Okay, I love it. Okay, A says, materialistic desire is both the engine of and the universal virtue for capitalism. This is very obviously wrong, right? Because it was briefly mentioned in the first sentence of the passage. Okay, this is the engine of the capitalism. But really the main idea focusing on talking about how this materialistic desire is like, right? I think consumption is the universal virtue for capitalism, right? This answer choice in and of itself is not correct. And then also it's absolutely not the central focus of the passage, okay? Even though it was briefly mentioned. All right, B. In the 1920s and 1930s, new form of economic research were used to understand the role of consumer in the economy. I actually like it, right? New form of this economic research were used to understand, okay, because that's basically what the title is, right? What the title is, new market vision, new expenditure survey, blah, 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 right? Okay. So I'll keep it. And then C says, materialistic desire is the basis for addressing perceived economic inequalities, okay? Maybe not, right? As I said, like A, this desire is really something that was briefly mentioned in the passage, definitely not a central focus of the passage, all right? D says, expenditure surveys help justify arguments in favor of minimum standard living. This is opposite of truth, right? So this is really in favoring of what? In favoring of purchasing power, consumer behavior, consumption, right? Instead of standards of living, which was a focus prior to World War I, okay? So I would say D is probably not, and then B is my best answer, okay? All right, question 49. Suppose that various expenditure surveys find that when wages increase, people generally save their money rather than spend it on new products. How would this finding affect the arguments of 1920th era labor activists, okay? So there are two components in this question, okay? The first component is the new scenario that's provided, okay? So we have to sort out, we have to set straight what is the new scenario. The new scenario is as the wage increases, people generally save more rather than spend it on you. Okay, so as wage increases, the purchasing power, okay, PP, purchasing power decreases, right? That's what the scenario says. They're saving more instead of spending more. So purchasing power is decreasing, okay? Okay, the second component in this question is we have to know the argument of the 1920s era labor activists. What is their argument, right? So we have to know what is one, what is two. As we know, we are clear, crystal clear about the argument, then we can know, okay, how does one affect two, right? How did this finding affect the argument of 1920s era labor activists? Okay, so what is the two? What is the second component of the 1920s era labor activists? I think they promote evaluating what the purchasing power, the consumer behavior, right? So their focus is really, after the war, the PP should increase, right? The consumption as the central focus of this passage, consumption should vary, right? Not necessarily increase. I mean, not necessarily increase, or PP not necessarily increase, but at least like these are things they really want to. They want to study, right? Because they think they vary, okay? All right, so, but I think mostly they're increasing, right? Okay, all right, let's see. A says their arguments would be, okay, so before I actually dive into A, B, C, D, so we can know that 1 and 2, actually, do they support each other, or do they weaken each other, right? I would say kind of they're contradictory, right? They're contradictory to each other. Okay, so that is my expectation. I don't know, okay? I feel really uneasy. I'm sweating, I feel like really anxious, doing cars. It's not my favorite subject, but it's okay. We've got this, right? I share the anxiety. I share the frustration, but we got to go there. We got to keep going, okay? We got to keep reading. Okay, A says, their arguments will be supported. Okay, no, I don't like it. It's not being supported, right? Because savings increase the long-term well-being of the working class. I don't think so, okay? As I had the expectation that they contradict each other. So maybe not. B says what? B says their arguments would not be affected because they do not address the issue of saving. Okay, I mean, I don't know, right? I honestly don't remember if the passage talk about the issue of saving, right? It did talk about, purchasing power, consumption, consumer behavior, but it's okay, we can just keep reading, okay? C says, their arguments would be weakened because an increase in wages may not lead to increased consumption, okay? I like this so far, right? Because my memory is telling me that, those activists, labor activists in the 1920s era, think that there's an increased consumption, right? So that this means that people are buying more, spending more instead of saving more. So, right? So this meets my expectation that A contradicts 2, right? Okay, let's keep reading D, see if it's a better choice. D says their arguments would be weakened because an increase in wages may not lead to an increase in productivity, okay? So this productivity is basically talking about the production, right? The production of the factories. I think this is irrelevant. Okay? And then I don't remember B. I don't remember if the passage ever talked about saving, but I think C is what I would choose, within the 10 minutes of doing one passage on the real exam, okay? So if I made the wrong choice, I will let you guys know in the description, or I'll make a different video. But for now, I think C is my best answer, okay? All right, question 50. Of the following passage claims, which one is most supported by evidence or explanation in the passage, okay? Which one is most supported? Okay, all right, so this question is asking us, of the following, which one is most supported? Okay, so which of the following choices support the evidence and explanation in the passage, right? So if you see one of the choices that's not an evidence or explanation in a passage, you wouldn't want to choose it, okay? So let's read it. Okay, A says, before World War I, consumption-based costs for higher wages relied heavily on ethical claims. Okay, yeah. I mean, before this, did we ever have this consumption-based costs? I think before World War One, it's more really about like standards of living, right? Things like that. Okay, so maybe not. Okay, B says the institutionalists charge that the neoclassical economists lacked an empirical grounded theory of consumer demand. Okay, charge that the neoclassical lacked an empirical. Yeah, maybe, right? Because I mean, neoclassical economists, they're the people before, right? Before the war, they're the traditional ones. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, right? I feel really uneasy. Okay, I'll keep reading. See, before World War I, labor activists were concerned with arguing for an appropriate standard of living, okay? Or concerned with arguing. Yeah, I think that's true, right? I think that's true. That's definitely better than A, right? I already like C better than A, so I'll cross out A, okay? I'll kill this, and then I'll keep reading. D, okay? D says, the transition in the political economy during the 1920s and 1930s were accompanied by shift in research objectives for expenditure surveys. Okay, now my uneasiness is gone, right? Why? Because after I read D, I really like it more than B and C, right? I don't want to so as you guys read answer choices that made you struggle, like B and C made me struggle for a minute, right? Like just don't fixate it on your struggle, like keep reading, right? Because D really opens the door for me, okay? I want to choose this as my best answer because it's really the main idea, right? I mean, B or C, they are to some extent supported, right, by the explanation in the passage. But D is really the main idea, right? D is really what the passage is about, is this shift, right? This shift in our research objectives, okay? So I like D, I'll choose it, okay? All right, question 51. Which of the following methods for readdressing economic inequities is not mentioned in the passage, okay? All right, this is really comprehension, right? There's no logic here. It's really, if you remember it or not, if you don't remember, you can go to the passage. And then this is really, I think where it is. Okay, here, economic inequities, and then building and the strengthening union, regulating production and retail practices, and this distribution of economic policies, okay, blah, blah, blah. All right, so the only thing that's not mentioned there is A, monopoly, right? Okay, perfect. So if it's a great thing if you remember this, after doing all 5 questions and then just pick A. If not, no big deal. Go back for 20 seconds, okay? All right, question 52. Okay, we have 2 more to go. Of the following arguments for higher wages, which one would most likely have been proposed in the late 1920s, okay? All right, so of the following arguments for higher wages, okay, after the war, there must be higher wages. Which one will most likely be proposed in the late 1920s, okay? So I am thinking that, before I even dive into the choices, I'm thinking to myself, okay, as you have more wages, the labor activists might propose, hey, spend more, okay? As your purchasing power is stronger, right? I don't know. Okay, let's see. A says, one based on the importance of equality and fairness, okay? No, I don't like this. This sounds more like before the war, right? Where people focused on standards of living from this ethical perspective. So maybe not. B says, one based on the importance of consumers' ability to pay for products. I like it so far, right? But I'll keep reading. C says, one based on the importance of a minimum standard of living. No, this is just like A, talking about before the war, right? But the question is really asking about late 1920s, okay? D says, one based on the importance of providing food and shelter to the needy. Okay, this is really very much like A and C, right? So B is my best answer, okay? I feel pretty easy about this one. Okay, question 53. One can most reasonably infer from the passage discussion in the second paragraph that before 1920, there were no. Okay, now this is talking about before 1920, there were no such thing, okay? So to simplify this question, okay, I'm going to choose one that they don't have before 1920, okay? All right. So, okay, I like to think through it before I even read it. So I'm not even looking at answer choices now that I'm talking to myself, that I'm thinking, okay, the passage is mostly talking about after the war, after in this 1920s period that we have this consumption-based purchasing power, this shift of our survey objects, since people are probably making more money, things like that. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to choose one that's related to this: purchasing power, consumer behavior, consumption, things like that. I don't know if ABCD, one of them will be this, but let's read it. A says, economic studies that provided empirical data about expenditures. Oh, what is that? I don't know. B says, methods available for accurately comparing the standards of living of different social groups. No, right? Because I think before 1920, that paragraph talks about 1920, we do remember they compare those data among different social groups. These are all like lower classes social groups, but they are different social groups. Comparison did happen, right? Okay, so I want to cross out B. C says, studies designed to assess the economic effect of changes in industrial production. Studies design. Oh yeah, I think it does have it. They do have it before 1920s, because industrial production, that's like related to what? Standard of living, fairness, equality, things like that, right? So maybe not C. What about D? D says, nationwide studies of expenditures of all social groups in an industrial economy. Okay, social groups in all industrial economy. And I remember that all the social groups are like from lower, there's the working class, family farmers, the poor. And then the passage describes that's the specific regions and focus on social groups near the bottom of an industrial economy. Okay, so I know that these are not all the classes. These are just the groups near the bottom of an industrial economy, right? So I'm gonna just stop struggling with A and I'll pick D, okay? So that's my analysis of this course passage. Is really challenging, and then I hope you can relate to this.